You see them from above, massive etchings in the desert, a spider, a monkey, lines stretching for kilometers. Everyone knows the Nazca Lines, ancient astronauts, some say, giant calendar, others claim. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Almost every theory we have been sold for a century was wrong, not slightly off, completely backward. In September 2024, artificial intelligence found 303 new geoglyphs in 6 months. That is more than were discovered in the previous 80 years combined. And what those images revealed flipped everything. The lines were not for gods in the sky. They were not pointing at stars. They were roads, ritual roads, and the people walking them were doing something far darker than we wanted to believe. Also comment from which city you are hearing this from. Also, this script is researched and factual, using sources from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, published September 23, 2024 by Masato Sakai and his team at Yamagata University, and Between the Lines by archaeoastronomer Anthony Aveni from 1990, who spent decades measuring every line and debunking the astronomical theory with hard mathematics. Now back to the information. Scrape away the pebbles, expose the sand, you get a line. Preserve it for 2,000 years because nothing grows, nothing erodes. Simple, brutal, permanent. He watches the sun set exactly along its direction. He radios down. Quote, "The largest astronomy book in the world, that single observation, that one solstice alignment, launched 80 years of error. She spent 50 years mapping them. Crawling on her hands and knees in the desert with a measuring tape and a broom, she found another solstice line, then lines converging at the summer solstice. She published Mystery on the Desert in 1949. Her theory, astronomical calendar. The lines tracked sun and moon positions, planting dates, harvest schedules, constellations. She believed the Nazca people, primitive as they seemed, had a sophisticated grasp of celestial mechanics. She compared the spider geoglyph to the constellation Orion. She died in 1998, convinced she was right. They measure every line they can find, precise bearings, elevation angles. They calculate positions of sun, moon, and bright stars for the entire Nazca period from 200 BCE to 650 CE. They run the numbers. Statistical analysis. Cold, mathematical. Result, insufficient evidence. The lines do not point at anything, a few align by chance. 1990, published in The Lines of Nazca by the American Philosophical Society. Hawkins and Aveni concluded the astronomical calendar theory was wrong. Not debatable, not uncertain, wrong. After the visitors left, the people carved messages in the desert to call them back. Ridiculous. But it made him rich. The theory still circulates. Ancient Aliens ran episodes on it. Joe Nickel, investigator at the University of Kentucky, proved in the early 2000s you could recreate the largest figures in days with stakes, ropes, and a small team. No aerial view needed, no aliens required, just planning and labor. Darker, and it was sitting in the pottery the whole time. Heads in the hands of shamanic figures. Heads with ropes threaded through holes in the forehead. The Nazca were headhunters. Over 100 trophy heads discovered since the early 20th century. Analyzed. The heads were removed by slicing through the neck with a sharp obsidian blade, severing the cervical vertebrae. Then the base of the skull was broken away, soft tissue removed, tongue, muscles, throat structure discarded. A hole punched in the center of the forehead, rope threaded through. The head could then be worn, displayed, or carried. Same geographic origin. These were not enemies. They were locals. Members of the Nazca community sacrificed for the community's benefit, or perhaps ritual warfare between related communities. Either way, the violence was internal. To survival in one of the driest places on Earth. The Nazca Desert averages 20 minutes of rain annually. Life depended on water from the mountains, snowmelt from the Andes, irrigation from underground aquifers called puquios. The puquios are still there, still functional. Stone-lined channels that tap groundwater. The Nazca engineered them, sophisticated hydrology. But it was not enough. They needed the gods to send rain. And the gods demanded blood. The Nazca believed the mountains controlled rain, rivers, fertility. Reinhardt argues the lines were sacred paths, pilgrimage routes leading to places where rituals for water and crops were performed, not pointing at anything in the sky, leading to worship sites on the ground. The figures? Symbols to invoke deities. Messages not to aliens in space, but to gods in the mountains. Researchers present findings at the Society for American Archaeology. The geoglyphs fall into two groups, different construction techniques, different locations, different imagery. Group 1, relief type, smaller figures, 9 meters on average, made by removing stones from the interior of the design, exposing white sand, depicts humans, domesticated animals like llamas, and decapitated heads. 81.6% of relief-type geoglyphs show human motifs or things modified by humans. They are located near footpaths, informal trails crisscrossing the desert. Average distance from a trail, 43 meters. You could see them while walking. Group 2, line type, larger figures, some over 100 meters, made by removing stones from the borders of the design. Depicts wild animals, birds, killer whales, monkeys, spiders. 64% wild animals, located near the elaborate network of straight lines and trapezoidal geoglyphs. Average distance from the line network, 34 meters. These were built and used by the community for ceremonial purposes. You walk from your village to Kawachi, you see these images along the path. They remind you of your purpose. They prepare you. Line-type geoglyphs were for large gatherings, pilgrimages, community rituals. You join hundreds of others walking the sacred lines toward Kawachi. You pass the giant hummingbird, the condor, the spider, and you know you're on a holy road. Kawachi sits on the south bank of the Nazca River, 28 kilometers west of modern Nazca City. It overlooks the pampa where the lines are etched. The site covers 0.6 square miles, 1.5 square kilometers, over 40 mounds topped with adobe structures. The largest is the Great Pyramid, 110 meters long, 90 meters wide, 28 meters high, 7-stepped platforms. The Great Temple measures 150 meters by 100 meters, rising 15 to 20 meters. Room of the posts, richly painted walls, musical instruments and rayed faces, niches filled with offerings, pottery, corn, shells, gourd rattles, portable looms, painted fineware. Her findings: Kawachi was not a city. It was a ceremonial center, a pilgrimage site. Population ebbed and flowed with ritual events. No permanent residential structures, no trash middens, no evidence of daily domestic life, just temples, plazas, and tombs. The ratio of plain utilitarian pottery to fancy polychrome pottery was 30% to 70%. In a city, you would expect more utilitarian wear. At Kawachi, the emphasis was on ritual vessels. This was a place of worship, of feasting, of sacrifice. Some show signs of ritual sacrifice, some tombs looted, others intact, decapitated heads buried alongside the mummies, trophy heads as offerings, blood for the gods. These were pilgrimage roads. You started from your community. You walked for hours, maybe days, across the desert. You followed the lines. You saw the geoglyphs. You arrived at Kawachi for harvest festivals, ancestor worship, burial rites, rain ceremonies. You participated in rituals. You made offerings. You witnessed sacrifices. Then you walked home. He and his team mapped the pampa on foot. They found that most lines are pathways, cleared strips where you can walk without stumbling. The trapezoids, those massive wedge-shaped clearings, are gathering places. You assemble there, hundreds of people. Community events, rituals connected to water acquisition. The straight lines radiate out from central points, ray centers. Some centers have up to 15 lines converging. Aveni calls them nodes of social organization. Each line maintained by a different kin group, different community segment. Walking your line is a social duty. Keeping it clear is a communal responsibility. The lines mark relationships, kinship, labor obligations, ceremonial roles. The relief-type geoglyphs, the smaller ones near footpaths, start appearing in the initial Nazca period. The line-type geoglyphs, the big ceremonial ones, are associated with the network of long straight lines and trapezoids in the early Nazca period. The sequence matters. First, informal paths between settlements, small images to mark the trails. Then, formalization of pilgrimage routes, large geoglyphs for community rituals. The system evolved. Then it ended. Water scarcity. By the 7th century, the Nazca culture faded. The Wari Empire expanded from the highlands, absorbing Nazca territories. The lines fell silent. No one walked them anymore. The knowledge of their purpose dimmed. By the time the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, the local people had no memory of who made them or why. He was closer to the truth than anyone for 400 years. Luis Monzon, in 1569, reported seeing ancient ruins and roads. That was it. Silence, until aviation. The lines were not made to be viewed from above. They were made to be walked. The fact that you can see them from the air is incidental. The scale is large because the rituals were communal, because the landscape is flat and barren and allows for massive construction, because the Nazca had time and labor and religious fervor. Masato Sakai and his team from Yamagata University partnered with IBM Research. They trained an AI model to detect faint geoglyphs in drone and satellite imagery. The AI scanned the entire Nazca region. It spotted outlines 20 times faster than humans. Field teams verified the findings between September 2022 and February 2023. 1,440 labor hours on foot. Permission from the Peruvian Ministry of Culture, ground truthing every candidate. Result: 303 new figurative geoglyphs confirmed. 81.6% of the relief type show human-related motifs, one killer whale holding a knife, 22 meters long, near an ancient footpath. Sakai explained to New Scientist, quote, "On some pottery from the Nazca period, there are scenes depicting orcas with knives cutting off human heads, so we can position orcas as beings that carry out human sacrifice." Now back to the story. Mountains, springs, rivers. The Nazca believed these were divine. They walked the sacred paths. They performed rituals. They sacrificed. The severed heads, the trophy heads, were offerings. Blood spilled to ensure rain, to guarantee crops, to sustain the community. The pottery depicts it clearly. Heads sprouting vegetation, death transformed into fertility, blood into water. They bound infants' heads with boards and cushions, elongating the skull, sign of status. They practiced trephination, drilling holes in the skull to relieve pressure or for ritual purposes. They mummified their dead in fine textiles. They buried them with offerings, panpipes, ceramics, food. They took care with the dead, and they took heads, 100 plus confirmed trophy heads, all with ropes, all modified for display. Some still have hair, preserved by the dry climate, integrated into the social and religious fabric. The hummingbird does not mark equinoxes. These are projections, desires. We wanted the Nazca to be astronomers because it made them seem advanced, but they were something else. They were desert survivors in one of the harshest environments on Earth, negotiating with gods they believed controlled their fate. They built roads to walk. They carved images to honor deities. They shed blood to bring rain. But it sold. Von Däniken made millions. The History Channel built a franchise. Ancient Aliens episodes on Nazca aired dozens of times. Why? Because extraterrestrials are easier to accept than ritual sacrifice. Because thinking about headhunting and blood offerings makes us uncomfortable. Because we want ancient people to be mysterious, not brutal. But the Nazca were not mysterious. They were practical. Water was scarce. Gods demanded sacrifice. They complied. You join the pilgrimage, you walk past the condor stretching 90 meters, you feel the scale of the ritual. You are part of something massive. The hummingbird, the spider, the monkey, these are not astronomical pointers. They are totems, symbols of the gods, representations of the forces that control your life. Rain, fertility, survival. The sacrifices were made there. The Great Pyramid rose 28 meters above the desert floor. You could see it from kilometers away. It was the beacon, the destination. You arrived. You climbed the stepped platforms. You entered the temples. You saw the painted walls, musical instruments, rayed faces. You heard the panpipes. You smelled the offerings, corn, shells, incense. You witnessed the ceremonies, the decapitations, the blood. The heads displayed on poles. You understood? This was the price. Rain for blood, crops for death, life for life. The Pukios kept working. They still work today, but it was not enough. The population could not sustain itself. The Wari moved in, new religion, new gods. The old ways faded. Researchers estimate 250 more geoglyphs await confirmation. The Nazca made more of these than we ever imagined. They were prolific, obsessive. Generation after generation walking the lines, maintaining the paths, adding new images, renewing the sacred roads. This was not a one-time project. It was centuries of labor, continuous, relentless. Temperature stable around 25 degrees Celsius year-round. The lines stay visible. The Pan American Highway cuts through the site now. Cars drive over 2,000-year-old geoglyphs. Development encroaches. Informal mining threatens the area. In 2025, the Peruvian Ministry of Culture tried to reduce the protected zone by 42%, from 5,600 square kilometers to 3,200. Outcry forced a reversal. But the threat remains. Looting is constant. Burial sites stripped, artifacts stolen. The Nazca Lines are a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1994, thanks in part to Maria Reika's tireless advocacy. She spent her last years in room 130 of the Hotel Nazca Lines, lecturing to tourists, protecting the desert. She died, believing they were an astronomical calendar. She was wrong about the purpose, but right about the importance. Information systems, communal gathering spaces. We know they reflect Nazca religion, centered on mountain worship and water veneration. We know that Nazca practiced ritual decapitation. Trophy heads were offerings to gods who controlled rain. We know the pottery depicts this clearly. Orcas with knives, heads sprouting plants, blood for fertility. We know the lines were walked, not viewed from the sky. We know they were maintained by kin groups. Community effort, social organization encoded in the landscape. We know AI found 303 new geoglyphs in 6 months. More are coming. We know the relief type and line type serve different functions. Small scale and large scale, personal and communal. We know the astronomical theory is wrong, Statistically insignificant alignments, no calendar, no observatory. We know the truth is darker than we wanted. Headhunting, sacrifice. Blood rituals. One of the driest places on earth, and the price of survival was death. End quote. Published 2000 between the lines, University of Texas Press. He spent years on the Pampa. He measured, he mapped, he walked. He concluded, pathways, ritual roads. That is the answer. He compared the Nazca Lines to Sique lines radiating from Cusco in Inca times. Sacred roads connecting shrines. Social organization mapped onto landscape. The Nazca did it first, centuries before the Inca. The concept is ancient. Walk the sacred path. Honor the gods. Maintain the community. He saw the killer whale with the knife, 22 meters. He connected it to the pottery, orcas cutting heads. He understood. This was not art. This was theology. This was survival strategy. Blood for rain, death for life. He told the press, the AI spotted faint lines humans missed, relief-type geoglyphs, small, intricate, eroded, nearly invisible. The AI saw patterns in the pixels, outlines, shapes. It flagged them. Teams verified. Ground truthed. Confirmed. 303 in 6 months, 16 times faster than any previous method. The rate of discovery exploded, 1.5 per year from 1940 to 2000, 18.7 per year from 2004 to 2020, 303 in 6 months in 2022 to 23. Exponential acceleration. The AI revolution in archaeology. Sakai wrote, quote, AI may be at the brink of ushering in a revolution in archaeological discoveries like the revolution aerial imaging has had on the field. End quote. Published September 23, 2024. Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Until collapse, until abandonment. The system worked until it did not. The gods did not send enough rain. The trees died. The soil blew away. The people left. The lines remained silent, waiting for aircraft to reveal them, waiting for theories, aliens, calendars, messages. All wrong. Waiting for archaeologists to walk them, to measure them, to understand. Waiting for AI to find more. 303 more. 250 more to come. Waiting for us to accept the truth. They were roads, ritual roads, and the rituals were bloody. Domestic animals nearby, plants, heads. The pattern repeats. The story is the same. Walk the path. Honor the gods. Survive. They shed blood. They took heads, trophy heads, local heads, members of their own communities. Blood for rain. The pottery shows it. The heads prove it. The lines lead to it. Kawachi, the ceremonial center, the pilgrimage destination, the place where it all happened. Von Daniken said aliens. The public believed it. The History Channel amplified it. But Hawkins and Aveni ran the numbers. 1990, insufficient evidence, no alignments, no calendar. Reinhardt studied the culture. 1985, mountain worship, water veneration, sacred paths. Silverman excavated Kawachi. 1993, ceremonial center, pilgrimage site, not a city. Aveni walked the lines, 2000, pathways. Ritual roads, Sakai trained AI, 2024, 303 new geoglyphs, 81.6% human motifs, relief type near trails, line type near ceremonial networks, social organization, pilgrimage system, water rituals, sacrifice. Everything else is us wanting ancient people to be mysterious or advanced or in contact with aliens. The Nazca were none of those things. They were farmers in a desert who needed rain and believed gods controlled it and built roads to sacred sites and performed rituals and made offerings and shed blood and took heads and walked home and repeated it for centuries until the rain stopped coming and the trees died and the culture collapsed and the roads fell silent. Relief type, information for travelers. Line type, spaces for communal rituals. Both lead to Kawachi. Both serve the same goal. Appease the gods. Get rain. Survive another year. That is the purpose. That was always the purpose. We just did not want to see it. The gods, if they were ever there, are gone. The rain never came. The Nazca faded. The Wari took over. The Spanish arrived. Centuries passed. Aviation revealed the lines. Theories exploded. Aliens, calendars, star maps. All wrong. Archaeologists walked the Pampa. They measured. They dug. They found pottery. They found heads. They found Kawachi. They pieced it together. AI accelerated the process. 303 new pieces in 6 months. The picture is complete now. Pilgrimage routes to a ceremonial center where rituals for water and fertility were performed, including ritual decapitation and display of trophy heads, encoded in a social organization system that maintained the roads and the religion for centuries until environmental collapse ended the culture. For the Nazca to walk, to honor their gods, to beg for rain, to survive. Blood for water, death for life, roads in the desert leading to temples in the sand where heads hung from poles and plants sprouted from skulls, and the people believed, truly believed, that if they did this, the gods would send rain, and the crops would grow, and they would survive another season. They were wrong. The rain stopped, the crops failed, the culture died. But the lines remain, silent testimony to 2,000 years of walking, worshipping, bleeding, dying, hoping. That is what we got wrong. We thought the lines were about reaching for the sky. They were about surviving on the ground. We thought they were about the future. They were about the present. We thought they were mysteries. They were just roads, ritual roads, blood-soaked roads, roads to nowhere, roads to survival, roads to the gods. Roads we finally understand now that the AI found the missing pieces, and the archaeologists put the story together, and the uncomfortable truth emerged from the pottery and the heads and the temples, and the desperate prayers etched in stone 2,000 years ago in the driest desert on earth, where 20 minutes of rain per year was never enough, and the gods demanded everything, and the people gave it, and walked the lines, and bled and died, and left behind the largest ritual landscape in human history. That is what we got wrong. Everything. Until now. The heads piled up. The lines kept being walked. The rituals continued until they stopped. Around 500 CE, drought, collapse, abandonment, Kawachi buried, lines silent. Human activity damages them. The Pan-American Highway cuts through. Cars drive over geoglyphs. UNESCO protection helps. But it is not enough. Vigilance is required. Research continues. AI will find more. 250 more estimated. Maybe more after that. The Nazca made thousands. We have found 733. How many remain hidden? How many eroded beyond detection? How many destroyed by modern activity before documentation? The AI gives hope. 20 times faster detection. Algorithms spot patterns human eyes miss. Field verification confirms. Documentation proceeds. The rate of discovery will continue to accelerate. We will map the entire system eventually. Every geoglyph, every path, every ceremonial network. We will understand the full scope, the complete social organization, the total ritual landscape. It will take years, maybe decades, but it will happen. And when it does, we will have a complete picture of a civilization that built the largest religious complex in the Americas 2,000 years ago using nothing but obsidian, rope, and desperate faith. Massive etchings in the sand that we are only now beginning to truly understand. That is what we got wrong. We looked for the extraordinary. The answer was ordinary, brutal, human, real. He thinks about the pottery, orcas cutting heads. He thinks about the trophy heads buried at Kawachi, ropes through foreheads. He thinks about the people who walked these paths 2,000 years ago, what they believed, what they did, what they sacrificed. He understands now. This was their world, their reality, their survival strategy. Blood for rain, death for life. He photographs the whale. He measures the dimensions. He notes the coordinates. He moves to the next site. The AI has flagged 249 more candidates. He will verify them, one by one, walking the desert, ground truthing, documenting, preserving, understanding. Water is survival. Survival is everything. That is the cycle. That is the purpose. That is the truth. We got it wrong for a century. We know better now. The evidence is clear. The AI found it. The archaeologist verified it. The pottery depicts it. The heads prove it. The temples contain it. Kawachi reveals it. The lines lead to it. All of it. The whole brutal, desperate human story etched in the sand by a people who needed rain and believed gods would send it if they walked the sacred roads and performed the rituals and made the offerings and shed the blood and took the heads and honored the dead and maintained the paths and kept the faith, even when the rain did not come and the crops failed and the trees died and the soil blew away and the culture collapsed and the roads fell silent and the gods disappeared and the people scattered and the lines remained waiting for us to fly over them and wonder and theorize and get it wrong for 100 years until AI and archaeology and pottery and heads and temples and hard evidence and uncomfortable truths finally revealed what the Nazca Lines were really for. Walking, worshipping, bleeding, surviving. That is the answer. That was always the answer. We just did not want it to be that simple, that brutal, that human. In 2024, 97 years after Toribio Mejia Gespe first spotted faint lines in the foothills, we finally understand, not fully. There are gaps. Questions remain. 250 more geoglyphs await discovery. Details need clarification, but the core purpose is clear. Ritual roads for water worship involving communal sacrifice. Everything else was wrong. Aliens, wrong. Calendar, wrong. Star map, wrong. Messages to the sky, wrong. The truth is on the ground, in the pottery, in the heads, in the temples, in the paths, in the desperate prayers of a people who lived in one of the harshest places on earth and did everything they could think of to survive and failed anyway, but left behind the largest ritual landscape in human history and 303 newly discovered geoglyphs that tell the same story over and over. We walked, we worshipped, we bled, we hoped, we died. That is what the lines were for. That is what we got wrong. That is what we know now, finally.